Thank you for being on time, who's ever here, the audience that we have. Welcome to our monthly webinar. My name is Andrea. I am with Minorea. Minorea is a company that's dedicated to present well-rounded solutions to bring genuine advantage to disadvantaged businesses. So in other words, we provide outreach and consulting services to help disadvantaged businesses with any contracting opportunities, any resources, the education, and anything that will help and give you a competitive advantage to build capacity and get contracts. Today's webinar, or the webinar for the month of June, is in regards of RFPs and RFQs. There is a lot of strategy behind RFPs and RFQs. There's a lot of preparation that needs to go ahead in order for you to take the time to build an RFQ or prepare an RFP and really have a good chance of, to get awarded. So today we're going to be talking about how to prepare ahead of time to have more probabilities of getting awarded an RFP. And so before we start our webinar, I'd like to share a few highlights of how we're going to be conducting this webinar. It should be on the bottom bar of your screen. You should have an option of Q&A. Any questions that you might have throughout the presentation, we're going to have towards the end a section to answer all the questions. So make sure to add them on the Q&A, write them down as soon as you have that question, and we'll make sure to address it by the end. Any technical situations or questions in regards to volume or anything like that, make sure to include it on the chat box. And Mauricio, who's one of our team members, will make sure to answer or try to solve the situation. Anyone who's registered, we automatically will send a video of this webinar and the presentation, the hyperlink. Always like to provide resources, links for you. Have that peace of mind. So now what we're going to be talking about on this webinar is what is your overall objective? Identifying the problem and solution, and then research, development, and relationships. And we're going to close it off with. So in order for us to be able to prepare for an RFP or an RFQ, we want to understand why, right? What is your objective for the? You don't want to. There's a lot of situations where contractors are just all over the place, and their overall objective when we ask that question, what do you want? It's win bid and gets lots of money, and that's a very. You're focusing on all the small things because there's a lot more to it. Might as well just say win bids and lose money instead of win money, because if you're not really prepared whenever you submit a bid, you can definitely be bounded to perform, and you can lose money if you don't know how to do it, right? So we want to be able to understand what direction you want to go to, and then make sure you follow through with all the procedures and prepare accordingly. So I would ask, what is your 5 to 10 year projection of your top one? What is your overall vision? How big do you want to go? What impact do you want to do? What are the solutions you want to be known for? Those are very heavy questions that sometimes companies don't do because especially the leaders are very, very busy doing their thing. So we need to, now there's a few webinars we do, like I mentioned, we do these monthly webinars, and there's a few webinars you might want to go over if in case you didn't participate, or if in case you don't remember a lot of the content. You have a YouTube channel where where you can go and go over some of the prior webinars. One of the or two of the webinars we recommend are Stay Focused, Get Your Company to be Strategic. That gives you a lot of insight on how to plan ahead and how to, strategic methods of execution. And then Essentials of Evaluating a Proposal. That's also important. Don't lose money when you win. Now, I put these memes because they're funny and there's a lot of truth to it. I don't know if you felt as a leader, as an owner, that you're telling your team what to do, but at the same time you don't know what you're doing at the same time. I'm sure at a certain point of any company's growth, that's how you feel. Like there's so much to do where you don't even know where to start. So identifying the problem is very important, and the most of the time, you are the problem as a leader. It's cruel reality in reality, because we have to, as leaders, we've got to make sure that we provide some direction to our employees, to our subcontractors, and even though construction might be a very forward service, there's a lot involved, especially when you're going into these larger contracts. So what you want to ask yourself, do I have all my operating procedures? What is that capacity of my capacity? What is the capital access that I have? What is the capacity for bonding? Maybe you know how to execute. Maybe you know how to perform on the field, but do you have that back office support to be able the paperwork involved whenever you're trying to project? So there's a lot of reflection that I encourage you to do within your business. What are the internal systems? Are they really pretty efficient? Procedures, does your team know about them? Do they follow it? Is there a process to be able to get your team to be more engaged? Can your company grow if you're not there? In most cases, whenever your company doesn't grow, if you can't say yes to that, it most likely do not have really good procedures, right? You got to make sure that you're firm and you feel confident that whenever you want to take a trip to the Bahamas, you got your whole entire team knowing what they're going to be doing, right? And the majority of business owners don't have that. So it's important to try and have system and procedures to adopt a good training system and engage a lot of embrace a lot of the technology that's out there to be automate procedures and build that capacity that you can, and at the same time try to be profitable when you're doing that. It's also good to interview your employees before you start knocking on doors for business. Ask your employees how they feel about it, or maybe not even ask how they feel about these systems. Maybe have some type of method where they can communicate anonymously. Because sometimes you might be able to, you might try and get your superintendent, or try and get even just a regular labor employee, and you can ask them, how do you feel about these procedures? How do you feel about our process? They might not be truthful to you because they're afraid of you, right? You have power to let them go. So maybe having an option of being of them expressing how they feel what your company culture is, expressing how they feel of how their system, these systems, the safety procedures are, will allow you to, to get really good constructive criticism, will identify where you need to make these. What about RFPs? Whenever you submit RFPs, how successful are they? Do you usually pass pre-qualifications? What is their past performance? Have any type of proof whenever you perform on a project? Do you take pictures? Do you, write down the story of what was the challenges of that project, the time, the contacts? It's very important to do these, and I'm asking these questions because the majority of contractors don't do this, and that's a problem. That's a really big problem, because once you want to explain what you do, now you don't have it on paper, and it just makes this formulating another RFP a little more complicated or time consuming. Do you know how to execute the project, but do you know everything else? So like I mentioned before, you might know how to go on the field, perform, but maybe you don't know how to do any of the compliance requirements. You don't know how to work with systems your clients deal with. So it's important to be well-rounded on everything that's involved for that project. And then one of the hardest things for contractors to do is delegate. Do you delegate? Or do you feel like you need to be on top of everything? You need to know this and know that from that department. Depending on how small you are, maybe the one department is a person, right? So as initially it's controllable, but if you really have a big vision and you want to grow and you want to take over these large contracts, you've got to make sure that you're already executing practices that will ignite that growth, that will help you with that growth. If you are still determined that you need to do the estimating, the project management, you need to go over, all the procedures, you go over all the finances, all that, it'll just be so overwhelming when it's time to try and get a good contract. So make sure that you already have like a really good power team of leaders that can help you with that, and start with the people that you feel more you trust more, and give them little by little, and empower them, and give them some power, some knowledge of what you do, and then try it out. And I know it might feel like it's time consuming and you don't have time for this, but believe me, this is the time to do it, because if you don't feel like you have time right now, you're not going to have time once you get those $1 million projects, believe me. So then right now is the time to little by little start showing, start recording, start trying to utilize tools to be able to help you communicate with your team, and then for your team to be able to take decisions on their own without having to consult you, and for those decisions to be decisions that are going to produce, right, and give back to your company. So now we identified some of the problems that we typically see with contractors or with business owners and leaders in general, right? So what are the solutions? Okay, this means this is an actual interview. Like if you have a one-on-one, it might not be an employee interview, it's a subcontracting interview, right? Or a contracting interview. And some contractors don't even know where to start on what to say whenever they're asking them these questions, because you haven't written them, you haven't done any planning for it. So whenever you go and they ask you, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Or in other words, where do you see your company within 5 years? All you can answer is that what I'm certified as a small minority-owned business. This is very typical, and I'm sure that if for any reason we do have in our audience some of the small business liaisons or some project managers that evaluate that they're cracking up with it. It's true. There's a lot of preparation that needs to be done whenever you ask for a one-on-one. You got to make sure that you have your ducks in a row, and you got to show that with that first impression that you can take over their project and make them look good. So the solution is sit down, talk to your team, and find out everybody to be why you're doing what you're doing, and eliminate the money factor, please. Eliminate the money factor. Money is as a vehicle. It's a vehicle to take you where you want to go, but it's not the solution. Why do you want to sit down and talk about your why and write it down? Because you'll have clarity on your direction. You'll know who to do business with. You'll know who to hire. You'll know what approach, and you'll know how to execute. There's another webinar that we recommend in regards to certification. I don't know if it's your situation, but we've dealt with contractors that they have minority-owned certifications through Southern California Minority Business Development. We have small business with LA County, the state. They're certified with the utility industry. They're certified with Metro. They have all these certifications, but they really don't know what to do after, right? They have all these options. They made an investment of time or monetary investment to be certified, yet they don't know what's next. And it's so important to understand what's next. So the DIY certification is a webinar where they thoroughly talk about the strategy behind the certification. Don't recommend to get certified for everything. You recommend to get certified for one thing and then focus on where you want to go. Take advantage of available resources. Our land of opportunity is there. All the opportunities are there. There's a lot of resources that you can go to, organizations, programs that you can be a part of that will give you a lot of information, guide. They'll give you coaches. They'll help you with access to capital. They'll give you contracts. There's programs where they're giving you contracts for you to grow. So I highly recommend you to go to these portals, the PTAC, Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, SBA. You get assigned a representative, and they can guide you through the process. MBDA, if you're a larger business, Minority Business Development Administration will help you with a lot of risk management tools. They'll help you in identifying where the capital is, how to help you with all that is free or for a reduced price. And of course, bonding capacity is a big factor for contractors. So there's a lot of opportunity out there to get programs where they'll subsidize a lot of the bonding power. So go to these and be persistent. Remember, these are free resources. So if they don't see you being very engaged, they're not going to be after you, knocking on your door, asking you to do all of this. They're not going to lead you and hold you throughout the way. You need to take that initiative. You need to be persistent and follow up, and you'll definitely get resources that you're supposed to. prioritize what's important. Look at the big picture and invest your time. A lot of contractors, especially the small ones, a lot of businesses, especially the small ones, they feel like they don't have any time. And that's one of the worst problems to have, worst mentality to have as well. Because if you're focusing, let's say, on trying to get a project, right? A, if you're starting off, you're trying to get $100,000 project, um, and you're handling these $50,000, $100,000 projects that you already do, because you don't have systems in place, you don't have anything, um, not delegating anything, you're leaving behind what's most important, which is working on your business growth, strategizing, identifying these resources, building relationships. So you're going to hit a plateau. Believe me, you're going to hit a plateau. You're not going to get away from those $100,000. And not only that, but a lot of the large organizations realize and understand that how a contractor looks when they're stuck, right? When they don't have this, they can't grow, or they don't have this ambition or this drive, and they will not give you an opportunity. See that you still have a lot of personal development that you need to do in order to lead your team for growth, and they don't really want to get stuck in that situation, especially when it comes to construction and large projects. They want to make sure that they hire a contractor that's going to be able to perform fast, they're profitable, and they make them look good. That's all it boils down to. Make sure that you um, focus on planning, executing, um, uh, writing things down, because when you write and record things, you'll be able to train, you'll be able to grow. Um, Train your team. Don't say you don't have any time to invest in your business kids, right? Train your team. Try to have methods of making it fun, of getting them to think in all, especially when it comes to procedures and protocols, when it comes to safety, when it comes to that they submit all their hours, all of that. Make sure you have proper training methods to go, or that if you have that, you're going to create a solution to many problems. You plan and execute that and write down all those executions and lay them out. If you train your team, you're going to see it's not only going to solve one situation, it'll solve multiple situations that you have going on. And then, of course, identify tools to measure outcome. That's so important. Some contractors are already revenuing 16 million, 20 million, but sometimes they don't have a way of finding out if they're really profitable, right? They might be revenuing that amount, but those 16 millions are going down the project. I mean, you never got to see them, and if you did get to see them, you're really not in you're not spending it wisely, right? Because you don't have all these measuring factors. You might be able to be very lean. You don't realize that maybe whatever profitability you used to have, you grow. Let's say you have a really good growth, and you've already measured that you have a 30% growth annually, right? That's a really good growth for a contractor. But if you don't have uh, other measuring procedures, you might not know that there's 10% potential of increments in growth, because you can improve your methods of training, or you can improve your methods of servicing the client in some of the digital tools that are available. Any of that will help you with saving money or making money. So that's one of the reasons why you need to prioritize all these uh, all these factors that most contractors, most owners, most leaders leave behind. Okay, so I provided a checklist um, for you to prepare for. Um, so there's our audience is a range of contractors that are barely starting from residential, wanting to go to to commercial, to large corporate companies that are just checking us out. Thank you for doing that. To large contractors, to contractors that are medium sized, they're no longer considered a small business. For anyone that applies, apply it, right? Consider it. But usually you have to have this done or improved. So check it out. Got to make sure that your research, you do all the research and identify your target industry and or organization. So in other words, what I'm referring by that is making sure what direction you want to go. Let's say you want to go to be able to perform on federal contracts. You want to be able to eventually get your 8A certification, and you want to go through that 9-year program. No, it's later on the future because you don't have the requirements. So going into public works can work, but maybe the strategy can be a little different. Maybe you can perform to see your capacity and see how it works because it's very relative. But there's other clearance, or not clearance, but protocols and compliance situations that range from public works projects to federal. So it's important to identify organization. And then if in case you do identify federal projects, there's hundreds of federal entities that you can. So if you want to do work with a certain company, why? Ask yourself why. Why do we want to work with that company? We'll go deeper into that aspect. Develop an elevator speech ready for that target. So once you identify who you want to pursue, what industry you want to pursue, then be ready for an elevator speech that's going to cater to that. Maybe you don't want to pursue just one person, one entity. Maybe you want to go industrial, because you have some past performance on industrial, and you want to go to public works. And if you're targeting those two sectors, you got to have an elevator speech and a capability statement for those two sectors. Because the verbiage that you're going to be talking, or the verbiage you're going to be using is very different, regardless if the projects that you execute are similar. Okay? The compliance requirements are very different as well. So you got to make sure that you pinpoint, because remember, elevator speeches is called an elevator speech because you got to have your thoughts aligned and be able to involve everything that you do, so the person is very clear on what you do and can recommend you to another person or another company, or they can use your services to work. You're pretty much trying to sell yourself in a matter of coming and going on an elevator, right? So that's why they call it an elevator speech. Have a simple, clear, and informative yet inviting website. It's important. Nowadays, it's important. For a lot of contractors, sometimes they didn't feel like they needed a website. But there's a lot of organizations, federal, public, that do go on those websites. And they determine if you have this capacity through your website. So if you don't have all your information, just like you have on a capability statement in your website, doesn't have to be, you don't have to have all the bells and whistles. They don't have to subscribe to anything. They don't have to do anything. You just need to provide a very clean and very forward information of what you are, what your capacity is, and if possible, develop performance metrics. This is what I was talking about. Every project that you do, part of your process needs to be writing things down. Date. What's the size of the project? What it was the awarded project, and towards the end, what was the ultimate price of the project, right? What are the contacts? Who are the contacts? You want to have them for two purposes. One, to make sure that you're ready for that RFP and put them in there because they're going to ask for past performance. And the other one is to follow up, to cultivate that relationship. You think those contacts are not, they don't continue doing projects where they can keep you in mind, or maybe they get moved to another area and they're think of you. You got to stay in touch. And then, of course, the pictures, the before and after pictures, the story behind it. What are the challenges? What solutions did you provide? What's the value that you provided to the client, to the customer? Create a workflow chart to manage the project. Usually on RFPs, especially once they hit a certain threshold, you gotta show that. You gotta show how you're gonna perform the project. So why not have it ahead, right? We'll have a general one ahead of time. That way, whenever the person that's creating that RFP is developing it, it's a lot easier to just get that done. Make sure you're certified and up to date. You're pre-qualified through that organization that you're trying to do business with. You're updated. You've updated all the licenses and permits. Believe me, you want to make sure that you're on top of all that, because that, whenever you have a contracting opportunity and they're ready to give it to you, if you don't stay on top of all of that, you can lose it. So make sure to do it, and not only lose it, you can also get fined. Like, for example, if you are registered through the Department of Industrial Relations, the DIR, if you submit a proposal and you've expired and you didn't pay, or you're not up to date with your DIR requirements, you get fined, right? So you not only lose the contract, but you're going to get fined for it. So you got to stay on top of this, especially when it comes to construction. There's so many areas where it's so sensitive if you fall short on updating all your information. Establish a good relationship with professionals that will help you through your growth. There's companies, there's contractors out there that they know they have a certain bonding capacity. They have the report showing the bonding capacity, but they have no idea who their representative is, and they have no idea how to increase it. They ask to increase it, and obviously now you have to update all the information you provide them that you've shown that you've done. But if you would have kept up with that relationship, maybe that person would have already had access to all of that. They know where to go. They know that it's as simple as going to your website to be able to show any of the information that they need. So it's important to stay in touch with, any financial institutions where you're trying to build those relationships, lawyers, insurance, everything that can help you with that with the growth of your company. Have internal procedures and measuring factors documented and trials. So you can document a procedure, right? But you got to make sure you try it out and then see the outcome. You definitely need to almost feels like you're a scientist. You're trying to experiment, right? So you got to document your ins and outs of what you believe the outcome is going to be out of some type of right, and then document what the actual outcome is. Say how you're going to modify. Say how you're going to continue because it was successful. And then later on, you create a systematic operation procedure. Have a contact and a database. CRM, customer relationship management systems, are amazing. They're free ones. Obviously, they seem free a little bit, but the majority of the businesses that start the CRMs, if they don't engage into all of this. They don't have that engagement. The whole team puts in all the people, all the contacts, and gets all this information in the system. There's no point. So it's always good to try at least this is the version for the time. Then you'll realize how good your communication process is with your team. They're not engaging with your processes or your initial and keep up with all the contacts and customers, then there's an internal problem going on that you really need to fix. Create procedures and identify tools that will generate reports. Eventually, you want to be in the Bahamas reading reports, not having to be on the site because everything will hell will break loose because you're not there, right? So you got to make sure that as you do procedures, there's a method, there's a tool, there's a process where it'll generate you numbers and reports and status. That way, you can make sure that as your business grows and you're delegating, that delegation is getting executed the way you want. Develop and execute as effective with effective training processes in safety, operations, estimating, any of the back office compliance requirements. All of that is so important. So you have your checklist for later on, and you can add to it because according to each contractor, either if you're a specialty contractor or if you are a general contractor, these checklist items will add up according to whatever service you have, whatever targets you have, whatever team and culture you have within your company. Okay, research, development, and relationships. Remember, I was explaining how sometimes you'll feel like you're a scientist, try and error. You do. You have to perform that way. So let's start with research, and we'll build ourselves through that scientist trial and error thing. So um, there there's a lot of organizations that have different methods of communication to be able to get interested parties to do work for them. And the larger the organization is, the more complex it is to understand their processes. But once you understand those processes, then you can have a really good conversation, and you can start building those relationships with those organizations. So um, there's different, we call them vehicles, and there's a lot of vehicles where you really want to go in and understand that process. Obviously, whenever there's RFPs and RFQs, um, those are pretty simple. You just go to the plan room where you need to get to know their plan room or their portals that they use to let you know and give you those alerts of those RFPs coming out. But if you're just looking at those portals, you know that by the time you see that project out on the platform, um, you are too late, right? This is an opportunity for you to start getting your feet wet, maybe build some type of relationship, communicate with with the project manager that's in charge, let them know that you can do this, but that project manager, estimating officer, resident engineer, anyone that's taking those decisions, they already have someone in mind. Believe me, they already have someone in mind. So there's a lot of legwork and a lot of preparation that you have to do before, right? Right now, when we considered on showing you what you needed to do to be prepared for the RFP, that's in case it comes out of the RFP. Now, there's a whole another process of how to find those projects before the RFP comes out. That's where you really want to be in, right? How to get. I'll give you a few tips right now, but there's a lot of areas where you can find when the projects are going to come out, and it all depends on the organization you're working with or you want to work with. Some organizations don't know, and some and then you just need they don't have like a portal, they don't have information of when the projects are coming out. So it consists of making phone calls, it consists of connecting, it consists of participating on their events so they can talk about their upcoming projects. But some organizations are big enough and they're organized enough to develop these forecasts, right, of projects that are coming up. So RFPs and RFQs are pretty simple to track. But how about, do you understand what a bench is? Do you understand what a blanket contract is? Do you understand what an IDIQ is? When we're talking about IDIQs, MATOCs, and POCAs, mostly we're talking about federal contracting. Those are the words, and each organization will have some type of term. So you got to make sure you know their language. Because if you know their language, you'll be able to ask better questions and get better answers. Right? So it's important for you to understand how these vehicles work. And you're not going to find out just by going into their website. Most likely you won't find out. You're going to find out by building those relationships, asking these questions, being in front of those events that they're coordinating. What initiatives do they do for companies your size? That's what you really want to investigate. What are those initiatives? What competitive advantage do I have as a company if I do business with this organization? You really want to do your research with that, because you don't want to be, I've been able to help contractors that, let's say you have I'm going to give you an example. Let's say you have an EMR rating, a safety rating that is not very good. It happens, right? There's accidents, it happens, and now you have to wait 3 to 4 years to be able to go back to your number one scale. But right now you're at a 1.5, you're at a 2. When you're showing that you're that high of a risk, if you start going to these, getting certified with the utility companies, for example, with Metropolitan Water or with Edison, you did all this legwork, you went to their events, you pre-qualified, you got certified for them, you see that there's a lot of projects, and then come to find out that you didn't do your research, and they're very adamant of making sure that you have a safety rate, a good safety rate. So there, you don't qualify. All that work, all that time investment, all that money that you put in to be able to get contracts derived from the utility companies is all thrown to, they're not thrown to the trash, because you still went through that experience, and now you have to go. Now you understand, but you could have that time investment could have been way more productive if you would have done your research ahead of time, that you didn't qualify for at least 3 to 4 years to perform work with them. Now there are situations where they provide, like you let them know that you really want to do business with them, and you give an example of what happened, and then there's a panel that where they schedule you a date, and then you get to talk and explain. And sometimes they'll give you a green light to start bidding on the projects and things like that. But a lot of situations, you don't get that opportunity. So make sure that you, according to your situation with your company, you make good decisions of who you target and who you connect. Don't be all over the place, like I showed on previous slides. Don't be all over the place. Be very specific of where you're gonna look for opportunities. So take into factor your past performance. There are so many organizations, especially the larger the contracts you want to target, the more important it is for them to understand how you can perform. What's your past performance? Do you have any knowledge? If you're focusing on historic restorations, do you have any knowledge on that? What are the projects that you've done? With what entities have you worked with? That's why you need to write them down, put them, take pictures, do all that legwork, because you want to get prepared for an opportunity that's relevant to your past performance. Now, what value do you bring to that company, right? There's certain organizations that are really looking for something. They're looking for welders. They're looking for contractors that are trying to build stuff underground. They're looking for a contractor that uses reusable material and is very conscious of eco-friendly solutions. They're looking for all of that. So if you have a really good knowledge and you consider yourself an expert in a certain area, then you must have organizations that probably are in need of that particular niche. So look for them, and then that's going to be a very good time investment in sort of creating that relationship and identifying opportunities with that organization. What outreach do they provide? Okay, so we talked about certifications. So yeah, certifications are very important. But if you're trying to do business with a utility company and you ended up getting a certification with well, you didn't get the certification that's specific to the utility company. Maybe you got a certification that's a minority owned. Sometimes they will recognize it, but most likely they want to recognize the one they usually recognize, which is the supplier clearinghouse certification, right? So sometimes they'll get you to do that, get that certification, and then we might give you an opportunity. We might give you an opportunity to work with us. So there's also outreach initiatives that they do, like boot camps. LACCD is very known for that. There's a lot of large contractors, if you're a specialty contractors, that do that. Turner Construction does it. What is it? There's there's a bunch of Kiwi. They have boot camps. There's so many large contractors out there that have these boot camps to prepare you to do business with them. And so that's a competitive advantage that you have, because if you attend, you'll be able to find those relationships. You'll be able to get to know these decision makers. What type of bonding assistance? I know LA County, cities, schools, transportation authorities, they have like bonding assistance. If you're barely starting and you don't know how that works, they have these trainings that they do that are really good, and it gives you an idea of what to do and how to do it. So try to do some research on that, and to identify if that organization helps these small contractors that way. Project forecast. So there's, like I mentioned, there's organizations that are very large, and they are very organized to the point where they already have these forecasts, right? They have it written down. Federal entities are big on that, and they send they'll have like 2 per year or once a year, and you can check out what vehicles. They'll have a MATOC where they're going to add so many contractors for these initiatives that include, the restoration of buildings, ground up construction. They have these huge initiatives where they want to make sure they have a really good pool of qualified contractors that can work with them. So be on top of that and find out if this is a company that has that. Now, get involved. measure and then build relationships. Do all of that together and have fun while you're at it, because you can have fun doing all that. So one example would be, okay, so you want to get, let's say you are trying to uh, get an opportunity, and you find this RFP that you want to bid on. So you get all your ducks in a row, you get all your paperwork, you submit the bid proposal. You got to make sure that you do what's called a debrief. Request a debrief right after. Some already have like portals where they'll show who actually bid on the project, and then later on, maybe 3 months or 4 months after, you don't get anything that you've been awarded an intent of award or anything like that, then you'll need to do your legwork, your follow up, and ask, is there an opportunity to do a debrief? It works two ways. Highly recommend. Don't skip that. Sometimes I even recommend it when you win a project, because you want to identify what you did right and what you did wrong on that proposal, and then learn from that. But that's one of the reasons why you want to do a debrief. The second reason is because you get to know the person that's making that decision. It's so important to be in front of them and let them know that you genuinely want to be able to help. You know that you provide a good service and you want to be able to do business with them. If you, not many do that. Not many do that. Many contractors know this. They don't do it because they're too busy. But it's so important to do it. And if you do that, if you do the debrief, you're getting involved, you're measuring, you're trying to find out what's going on, what did you do good and you did right, you write it down, and then you're building relationships while you're at it, right? You're asking all these questions and you're letting them know that you have. And I've had situations where we submitted the proposal, we did a debrief, we got to know the person, we connected well, they saw our genuine interest in trying to get opportunities, and we received calls to get a call that's not an RFP, to make sure they can get us to do a job walk for a project that's off the record, right? So that's one of the reasons why it's so important. Sometimes there's contractors that don't perform. They get awarded, they don't shit happens, and they don't perform. Excuse my language, but that's usually how it is. So whenever they don't perform, what's next? Who do I get? You want to be the one ready for that, right? And the way you're gonna find out is if you know that person. Um, don't be afraid to ask for help. Make sure you request a one-on-one and you record. Well, I'm not talking about the debriefs. I'm talking about one-on-one. Usually the process, whenever you're trying to do business with a large contractor or a large organization, they'll have a small business representative. That small business representative is sort of like the door to go in, right? Of course, you can skip that if you have the ability. Let's say you do a job walk and you get to know the project manager for that particular project, and then you let them know what you do, and just follow up. Don't follow up for stupid reasons. Just follow up for meaningful reasons, right? And before you know it, you might get something out of it. But usually the process is that they already have a few representatives or representatives assigned to help small businesses. Remember, when I'm talking about small businesses, it's in the construction, especially in the general contractors, uh, let's say, status of small business according to the government is revenuing more than $26 million. So that's what I mean about, if you don't revenue more than $26 million, then you're still considered a small business, and you can get that help through that small business liaison. Sometimes not even, I mean, as long as you get to know them, you might be able to share some situations. If you're a larger contractor and you get to know another representative, then you might be able to start adopting some methods of how to do that process, because obviously you're not a small business now. You're taking on projects that are going to have those requirements of fulfilling local and small diverse businesses, and you still want to build those relationships because they have experience. They'll give you the direction of where to go. Establish phases and study um, of your study. Okay, so establish phases of your study. So let's say you're targeting you're targeting a certain industry and a certain organization, right? You've identified that they have really good outreach efforts for your type of business. You can present value. You have that past performance. They're the perfect organization to reach out to and start working with them. Well, uh, what if that organization has all of that, but they don't have the 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 representatives that are very responsive, or they do have issues with your EMR or your safety rating, and right now you're going through some challenges on that, or they're well known for not really paying on time, and you have capital situations or situations with access to capital. You want to make take that into consideration. Well, maybe you did all this legwork and you sat down with the representative or project manager, and you found out that, oh, everything is union, right? And you're not really wanting to go union, or you have no idea how to do this, then you you that's a phase. You got to give yourself some deadlines. So let's say you've identified two organizations that you want to do business with, but you give yourself 3 months at least to connect and find out if we're actually a good match. If we do really present value, if I can do work with you, and then you remove them, eliminate them if for any reason you can't. You thank them, build the relationships. Maybe after you have that, what is it, the EMR rating or the safety compliance rating back on track, maybe you can re-engage doing business with them. But you don't want to spend your time on something that you know you cannot perform, or you won't take it out of the ballpark. So now go to the other one. Give yourself studies or phases of this study. This is where I'm now going back to the scientific strategy, right? Just like a scientist does a trial and error according to a theory they have, you're doing the same thing but with business. So make sure you have those procedures established, because all of that, once you have it recorded, 5 years from now, there's a new business development representative that's working on on your company's growth, and maybe they can go back 5 years and say, oh, you know what, this company, we've already established a relationship. I have the contact names, I have the emails of these people, and I just found out that there's a contract that's renewing, and oh, I can come back to that company because now we have our safety ratings back. We're pretty good at it, and we're performing outstanding. So now you re-engage, and all of that time that you and effort that you put in, because you put it on record, and now you have it within your system and your process. Now didn't go to waste. Now you're recapturing all that information and utilizing it for the future. Or you can provide value to other peers, to other projects. Let's say you're a federal contractor. You already have your 8A certification, that 9-year program, which the 9-year program is to get you from being a small business to at least a medium or large size business. That means that you've gotten contracts through certain vehicles that will allow you to not be, to get direct contracts. And now you're at the point where you're graduating that 9-year program. Well, when you're graduating that 9-year program, you're now needing to mentor someone, right? To continue that privilege of being able to get into those good awarded projects. Well, all this information that you recorded, it, it can present a value to the person you're mentoring now. Those are examples of the power of writing things and recording things. So, um, finally, whenever you want to do business with an organization or a company, you got to make sure you participate, you volunteer to any of their outreach efforts or initiatives. You want to show yourself that you're of value. You want to be able to connect with them, but connect with them for good reasons. If you find yourself networking and talking to a small business representative and saying that they're going through a project that's very remote and they don't have a contractor out there, and you're not going to perform on something like that, that's all the way to to Bakersfield or something like that, then you might want to, and you already know of a contractor out there, you might want to share that contact with the small business representative. That's value. That's connecting and providing them a solution. They're going to remember you. So you stay in touch, but stay in touch for good reasons. No, don't just call and say, do you have business for me, or do you have this? Don't make it about yourself. Make it about them. Okay. And of course, every time that you say you're going to send an updated statement of qualification, that you're going to make a phone call, that you're going to send an email, do that. Make sure you do that, because there's so many contractors out there, estimators, project managers, small business representatives that have been burned with that concept. They're networking, they're going to an event, they're saying they need help. The representative is trying to help them, communicating with them, saying, hey, you need to do this, this, and that. Send me your statement of qualifications. Send me your presentation. You're saying, I'm going to send it to you. I'm going to send it to you. Weeks pass by, you never send it. Then you go to another event and you say the same thing. What type of reputation are you building? Yeah, that contractor says that they want this and that, but they never hold their value. So they don't have a word. Are they going to want to do business eventually with you? No. So you got to make sure you're doing things right. And whenever you say you're going to do it, perform on it. Okay. And then golden rule, do unto others what you want others to do to you. If you like it, when there's a company or there's a person, a business, you've built a relationship, and that business remembers that you had COVID. You want to make sure, and that person is saying, hey, Mike, are you okay? I knew you had COVID. Is everything okay? Is your family good? And you're following up on something like that, that's pretty nice, right? They're taking you into consideration. So you want to give back. You want to do the same thing. You want to, if you remember let's say that an anniversary of work, if you see that the person has been promoted, for those things, you got to make sure you follow up. Hey, I found out that you were promoted. Great for you. Anything I can do is, even if it's not within an area where it's going to help you, it doesn't matter. You're showing that they were of value to you, because you're mentioning that you're proud of them for their growth. So just take all of that in consideration. I know it's a lot of work, but it's worth it. It's work that you're not just gonna see it and then see it go, right? It's gonna stay if you do it that way. All right, so I think we're done for this presentation. We do have some questions, so let's address the questions. Let me see. Oh, I guess we don't. It was a technical situation. All right, so if you guys have any questions, let me know. Right now, and if for any reason you just didn't come up with it right now at this moment, then and you did, something came up and you do have a question, you can connect with us. I mean, send us an email, call us. If you have any questions, make sure to reach out to me. I'm here available to help you with anything. And if we don't have the answers, because we're not going to have all the answers, we do have resources to be able to give you an answer. So let me know, and I'll be more than happy to share that with you and share a contact with you that's going to be able to give you the right answer for your question. Like I mentioned before, we have a YouTube channel. We highly encourage you to subscribe to it and check out our videos of prior webinars. And then, if for any reason you don't know, you're still in the your why, right? Your direction. You might not like the direction you're going right now, and you do want to identify what organization you really want to work with, and what purpose, what impact you want to do. If you really want to find out what your current capacity is, I highly encourage you to complete a free assessment. This free assessment, once you complete it, it'll allow us to identify your existing capacity. And once we identify your existing capacity, we can recommend niche construction professionals that you can start building those relationships with. We will recommend organizations that are going to help you with free resources, education, training, if you need to get capital, access to capital. And then, of course, we'll provide anything where we can help in identifying some of the solutions for you to be efficient, to be strategic, to make sure that you streamline your processes and you have systems and processes in place. Okay? Thank you so much for participating on this monthly webinar. We'll see you next month, on the month of July. Can't believe it's we're more than halfway through on 2022. So we look forward to connecting with you soon. And